Hello, you're listening to the K-12 Tech Podcast, bringing you insights into the world of education technology. Stay tuned as we discuss the past, the present, and most importantly, the future of technology in our schools.
Welcome to the K-12 Tech Podcast. Thanks for joining us again. My name is Sean. I am with K-12 Tech. We're also joined by Mike, who's also with K-12 Tech. And we're joined with Kim Nidy, CETL from North Canton City School Districts. Kim is the tech director or director of technology. Currently, he's been there for a long time, and she's got a lot of experience. And we're just going to kind of talk to her today about how she got to where she's at and things that have happened along the way, and things that she's put into process for the school. So, Kim, I'll give you the floor to introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Yes, I have been around a long time. So I actually graduated from North Canton schools back in the 80s. And so my husband graduated from here as well. And I have taught here almost all of my career. I was my first 2 years in Canton City Schools. And then I taught business management and all kinds of business classes and technology classes. I had 3 kids come through the system. My last one just graduated this past year. She's off to Kent State in the fall, a couple weeks, 10 days, something like that. So I've seen a lot, as most people who have been almost 30 years in education. We've all seen things come and go, and a lot of change. And so it's been kind of a fun ride. I started off as a teacher, and then even in the classroom, though, I was lucky I had a computer lab. So when I taught, I was able to use technology with my students all the time. What was not great was that I had desktops, and so when they left the room, they left the technology. Sure. And, even back then, I knew it was just really critically important for our kids to be able to have technology with them all the time, because learning doesn't have to stop when a student walks out of your room or out of your building. Learning can happen anytime, anywhere, and that's really when the one-to-one programs started to come around. So back in, I think, 2008, I tried really, really hard. I was still a classroom teacher, and I tried hard to get us a one-to-one. And as we all know, one of the problems with a one-to-one is, how do I get money to keep it going? Because I might get enough money to get it started, but then what do I do? As those devices go end of life, how do we keep that going? So in our case, we were lucky enough that we passed a permanent improvement levy, and that is what funds our replacement cycles on these Chromebooks every year. We have about a 5-year replacement cycle on teacher devices and student Chromebooks. So we're lucky that our community saw the value in that and passed that levy to keep us running. So then I transitioned down into here. But I saw the value way back when I was in the classroom, and I'm happy that we are where we are now.
Yeah, and I think that would give you a different perspective as far as, working with students directly and seeing where those maybe gaps need to be filled and where you can fill them with technology, then moving into the technology side of things where you now have to keep those gaps filled for the students and the current teachers that are now using the technology on a regular basis. And I think that gives you a unique perspective from, both sides of the road there. That a lot of tech directors coming from either technology companies or networking companies probably, didn't necessarily have until they were working in a school, and just learning what the students need versus you teaching the students with what you had and then looking at what you wanted.
Uh-huh.
So as far as that transition went then, what kind of, did you want to get into technology director position? Did you just kind of fall into it because you knew your stuff and then they asked you to move into it? Like, how did that transition go?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I never wanted to leave the classroom. I feel like I was really lucky. I taught classes that I loved teaching. They were, I had gotten to a point where I was teaching a career tech program. It was business management. So the students would take some initial courses, and then as seniors, they would run their own companies through the Junior Achievement Company Program. So every year it was really fun because there were startups, and they would get up and running. But what I started to notice when I was doing that too was that these kids were teaching themselves. If they had to make sales flyers for their company, for their business, if they didn't know the software, they got a YouTube video, or they Googled it. and they taught themselves how to use it. So, I mean, I felt like if we could just keep them going, if we could give them the tools that they needed, I mean, they could run with it rather than having to sit maybe even through a class to get them ready to learn how to do it. So anyway, I was in that position and loving it. And I told you that I had been trying to get a one-to-one in our school unsuccessfully back in like '08. So we ended up having a new superintendent come on board and he was here for about a year. And then he approached me and asked if I was married to the classroom, if I would consider leaving and coming into a district role, which I honestly had never really considered. And it was hard because I had such a close relationship with my students because they took a couple years before they were seniors. But I thought, I've been doing this for like 20 years at the time. And I thought I kind of would like the challenge, of the next part of my adventure here. So when I made the decision to come downstairs, but I came down as an innovation specialist, which was a fun title, I thought. So I was actually still on a teacher contract, but I was an innovation specialist. And right when I came down was right when the straight A grant was released, when Ohio had an opportunity for a straight A grant. So obviously I was pretty excited about that because it was all wrapped around innovation. So we wrote a grant very, very quickly. You had about 6 weeks to get that thing written. So we researched and we did ours all around active learning. So it was really about what do we need? We were already, I think I mentioned, we had already gotten the funding for our one-to-one to start up. So we had kind of that piece in place. And then the next piece was, what about our classrooms? Do they function in a way that we can be flexible with the learning that's happening in there? So we actually retrofitted grades 5 through 12 with active learning furniture. Everything moved, could be, shifted around, moved out of the way, instead of desks that you're, trying to drag across the carpet or the floor. And so we won. I mean, it was so exciting. I still remember when we got the notification that we won. We were literally one of like 12 districts that won that first round. So we won just shy of $5 million. And we, like I said, spent a chunk of it on furniture. And then we, put in some interactive projector technology. And we changed our libraries to make them more inquiry-based and just really had a good time. Although I did develop an eye twitch from that because we had to spend that money from, I think we had 6 months that money had to be spent. And while it's fun to spend $5 million, it was a full go. So, so that was my first 2 years. Then I moved into the director of instruction role for the district for 2 years. And I'll tell you what I've really learned the most. I thought I knew a lot about teaching and learning when I was in my classroom, but now that I've gotten out and I've seen it on a wider scale, and I think that we were so worried about do our teachers know like this website and that website, like all these little techie tools. We spent all this time trying to show everybody all these techie tools that they could use, but we really forgot that technology is there to support teaching and learning. It's really about good pedagogy. It's really about how are you working with students to engage them in learning, and do you have the tools that you need to do that? And so for me, that was like kind of how then I ended up sliding over. We had an opening for director of technology. And quite honestly, I'd been around so long, I just started doing some of the work because it needed done. And, we had all this stuff going on. And so now I have been in this role about 5 years. And I was worried at first because, to your point, I came from that education background. And sometimes I would go to meetings and, man, the tech talk, I was like, I don't know what they're saying. But what I found out was, and what my team that I work with kept telling me, don't worry. We know the technical stuff, so I have an awesome system administrator and I have 2 awesome tech guys. And we're a small but mighty department, but boy, we all each kind of have a niche. And it's okay. It's okay if you don't have that absolute tech background because your team fills in those gaps, to your point, talking about even those types of gaps. So I am the one who every time a teacher wants something that the tech team might go, oh, I say, okay, let's think about the learning that's happening in the room. And, even if it's a little difficult for us to maybe get it going for that teacher, is it best for kids? Is it best for that teacher and their ability to teach? And is it the best thing for kids? And if it is, then we'll figure out how to get it done. So I think I've brought that viewpoint of the teacher, into the tech department, which I am happy about because, again, that's why we're here. I mean, we're here to support the learning that's happening in the classrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned a few times now this active learning kind of structure that you've implemented at the school. Have you seen, so I feel like a lot of times with technology now, especially that everyone essentially is one-to-one and was very heavily reliant upon technology during closures, that I feel like a lot of teachers are now almost sitting back and just posting things online that the kids have to do and complete and read, and almost removing themselves from the teacher role in a little bit of a way. But this active learning environment sounds very much the opposite of that. So what kind of things, you mentioned interactive projectors, what are they doing on Chromebooks, or how, with desks that move around the classroom, how is that changing the learning experience from a student's perspective?
In so many ways. And I hope they're all floating through my ADHD brain right now, but I'm going to try to get them all out there because it's exciting. So, okay, one other thing I should say is that we were also lucky. About a year into rolling out our one-to-one, we realized we need a way to organize this. I mean, teachers were like, if I get one more shared doc, Gmail, I'm jumping out the window. So, so we immediately started looking for a way to, organize everything we were doing. And we ended up going with Schoology. So we have Schoology as our learning management system. Now there's a lot out, Canvas or even Google Classroom, but we ended up with Schoology. We love it. It made us really prepared for, to your point, when closures happened, our kids had devices, and we already had a very, trusted and rolled out system for that communication to happen. So that was kind of key. But here's some of the tangible things that have happened. So like we have a history teacher, a government teacher who is fantastic, right? And he wants to, talk about how, I think it was something where the cabinet was, working through how are they going to handle bombing in World War II, when we made the decision to bomb Japan, and so they get the kids, they put the classroom then in the shape of what that room would have looked like back then. And they have those kids sit at that table and have those discussions. And, he's made the point that I don't know if I could have done that before. It's so hard to move non-movable friendly furniture. So it became active in the sense where they not only were learning about it, but they were immersed in it. I've had a math teacher come to me and say, boy, I had a kid that I really didn't know how he was going to do, but the ability for them to team and group up and turn and work together. I mean, she really believes that made it so that he got that extra time and learning even from his peers and actually did well in the class. So, we've heard time over time how the furniture has really become a part of the learning. I think at first they were like, wait a minute, you're giving us furniture that kids can spin in or move, and they were a little hesitant at first. But I think now if we tried to take it away from them, I don't think it would go over well. So we just kept adding tools, but not a ton of tools. That's the other thing I found out. We're very streamlined, you know what I mean? And like the tools that our teachers have available, because it really gets messy if you have 3 different things that do this and 4 different things that do this. We really try to focus on what are the tools that they need, in the classroom, and let's provide them and make sure they have them and make sure that they're using them and they're trained. And so, we have a video piece that we use. We use Screencastify, we use Cami along with our LMS. And again, just trying to figure out how are they working with the students. So the furniture has been, I think, really life-changing for how we are working with kids in the classroom, how we're able to work with kids in the classroom.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of like Sean was saying, there was a lot there, and I definitely want to unpack some of it. So you mentioned the straight A grant. I'm not educated into what that is. Can you maybe describe what
Sure.
that is and maybe what the process was to apply for that?
Yeah, it was exciting for everybody because usually when there are grants out there, first of all, they're not $5 million grants. You know what I mean? They're like, they're much, even if you get a big grant, it's not anywhere near that amount. And also grants are a lot structured on, sometimes the demographics of your school, or there's just, some things that you need to hit in order to be able to apply for it. What straight A was it was wide open. It was, hey, if you have an idea, if you have an innovative idea, apply. I mean, and we're going to judge it based on the innovation of the idea and also sustainability. I mean, they wanted things that were sustainable, that they weren't just going to pump $5 million, into your district. And then a few years from now, what's the impact, right? If some of this stuff is gone. So for us, the furniture, was very sustainable. I mean, clearly it's been, gosh, what, 6 years? I mean, well, no, more than that. It's been 8 years, and we're still going. So that furniture will last a very long time. But it was really exciting because it was really more about your idea, your implementation, and how you plan to sustain it than it was about anything else. It was so different than most of the grants that are available to districts out there. And I think they did like 2 years of it, 2 rounds of it. So we won in the first round, and then they did 2 years of it. And I think then it didn't really happen anymore. I'd love to see it come back. So this is my plug for anyone might be listening that could make that happen, because it was really exciting. A lot of good work done at a lot of districts all around the state. I guess I should say too, one of the other things that we started that's pretty unique, because we had Schoology as a learning management system, there's always a statewide technology conference, OETC, Ohio Education Technology Conference. And we used to kind of get together with the Schoology rep for the state, and we started to get to know each other, like the directors of tech or the curriculum people. We just would go to kind of meetings that everybody that had this, and we kind of got together and said, hey, if we're all using the same system, why couldn't we streamline some of the things that we're doing and work collaboratively? So about 8 years ago, there were several districts that got together and started, it's called the Ohio Blended Collaborative. And we were supposed to be in year 1, but we ended up not being able to. So we've been in it since the 2nd year. We just had the meeting at Westerville last week with like 120 teachers involved this year from all around the state, from like 16 different districts. And they go through learning about blended, personalized learning. We have coaches from Connecting Ed, Sarah and Stephanie, that work with our teachers. There's 3, we've morphed it a lot over the years. I mean, it was literally something we just kind of grew from, hey, could we? And so now it is a 3-year kind of a program. So year 1, they learn what you would expect in year 1. They learn all about, what is blended personalized learning? How do you structure lessons? And then year 2, they take what they've learned in year 1 and they go on and create units in year 2. And year 3, now we've developed a coaching program. So this is the first year of the coaching program, but the intent is to train the coaches to then go back and work within their districts and train more and more teachers up through this learning model. And it's exciting. I will add that it used to be many years ago, teachers were afraid of blended learning because they heard it and they were like, oh, they just want to take our jobs. I mean, but really what we know, and especially I think the pandemic, if it proved anything, you've got to have good teachers. I mean, good teachers are really, really important. So blended learning is not just throw a kid on a computer and walk away. It is blend your instruction. The teacher plays a critical role. I mean, some of it is direct instruction, some of it is collaborative work with, among the kids. It's deeper, it's more engaging. And so we're excited about all the teachers. I think we've had over 500 teachers in the state now go through some iteration of Ohio Blended Collaborative. And we're just kind of growing it and growing it. So that's pretty unique and something I'm really proud of being involved with.
And that is unique because a lot of times, when we talk to people on this podcast, it's generally tech directors that are coordinating with other tech directors in COSIN or the different technology conferences. And we don't hear a lot about a tech director coordinating with a technology company to then coordinate with the teachers so that the teachers can then teach the students in a more well-rounded way or blended way as it would be.
Yeah.
And you just don't hear that happening a lot, especially with technology directors that didn't come from a teaching background. That would kind of probably seem new or maybe just not even not on the top of their list of priorities within their district. So that's really cool that you guys do that. I think that's great. And that's been, you said 8 years now, or?
Yeah, I think it's been 8 years. I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it's been 8 years, like 16. We had 16 districts together the last week, but we've had probably over 20 involved over some have come and gone and, for whatever reasons, but yeah, it's just been really impactful and we've learned a lot together. I mean, just again, it was like, what if, how about, and, we just started kind of trying to figure out how we could leverage, and I'll tell you how this has changed too. I started out by saying it was people that used Schoology, right? So then we had districts who use Canvas who were like, wow, like we want to be involved in what you guys are doing. And so we were like, well, fine, we don't want to be exclusive. So we brought in, a couple Canvas districts, but then we realized it was a little bit difficult to try to share things between those two systems. So now this year is our first year that we're going all with Google. So basically the thought is the creation is happening in Google. The sharing can happen between, districts with Google. And then you can take that and put it in your LMS or in Schoology, in Canvas, in Google Classroom. So we want to see it grow. We didn't intend to have it be exclusive, to one LMS. It was just how we got started because we were all together and we were all using that and we started dreaming about what we could do. The whole point was to build this collaborative piece where these teachers get out of their own district or their own county, and get to work with teachers all across the state. I mean, we'd love to see the model grow even further than that. It's exciting. I mean, the excitement in the room last week, it was palpable. Like they loved the opportunity to work with other teachers from other districts. So yeah, it was great. And I think to your point, I mentored somebody through COSIN this past school year, and he came from an IT background. And, one of the first things I told him was really get to know your curriculum people. I mean, whether that's your assistant super or if you have a curriculum director, whatever that department looks like in your district, you guys should be together. Because your planning should be wrapped around their goals, the district goals, the curriculum goals, and those relationships are really important. And so I would give that advice to anyone. These two, I'm very proud of our assistant superintendent. We have weekly connect meetings, and it's our assistant superintendent, our director of instruction, our gifted coordinator, special ed, testing, all of these folks, we meet every Tuesday. And so we know what everybody is doing, and we're able to coordinate efforts, because of that. So I feel like you got to get out of those silos and you got to get together because the work is about the kids. So, the silos don't help. Breaking that down and working together in teams is the best way to help your staff and your students and the community. So.
Oh, 100%. And I think, especially in the education world, the collaboration never stops, right? I mean, you can have a meeting on Tuesday, but you might be talking to the same people again on Thursday because you really never know what happens in the school environment from minute to minute, not even day to day.
Right.
But you did also say, so this whole thing kind of bloomed from being down at OTEC and talking with Schoology. I mean, so obviously great things come from conferences. Are there other groups or collaboratives that have come from, and not even just OTEC, just even with the COSIN conferences or anything else that's come from those that have been really helpful in the district?
Yeah, I would say, clearly every district kind of has their own agenda, what they attend and why. For me, and there's a lot of crossover, or sometimes, now that we've gotten to know each other, we'll plan like, hey, let's go to OETC, but let's meet on Tuesday at 5:00 because we're all in one place at one time. So there's some of that stuff that happens too, where we've started to get together in those ways. But there was a group that we went to FETC last year, which is the Florida Educational Technology Conference, which has grown immensely. It won't be in Florida next year. It's actually going to be in New Orleans, I think. So we definitely have people go to ISTE. I've gone to ASCD, which is more on the curriculum side. So I think the more that you're out there and meeting people and presenting, I really encourage people to. I always said you get out what you put in, right? So if you really want to get things from these conferences or whatever, you've got to get involved and meet people and present and do things like that. But I would say one of the things uniquely that came when you asked this question, the first thing that popped in my head was the pandemic again, like terrible, horrible thing to go through, but my gosh, I mean, we do have some good things that have come from it. One of the things that started happening was that we started meeting the whole state. They started to meet, like we had technology people, people that were interested in technology. We started monthly meetings back then, or I think it was even weekly when we were in the thick of it. But they would, we would just all pop in a call and, hey, I'm having trouble with this. And then everybody would feed, answers or help. Then it started, to kind of morph into more of an agenda. And they still happen. So even though we are through the closures and that kind of traumatic stuff that we went through, we found much value in the fact that we could very easily jump on a call and meet together and help each other solve problems or come up with ideas. So there's one that I attend that's more technology based. There's another one I attend that is more teaching and learning based. And I still attend them. I've gotten to know the people, in them. And Learn 21 is also a great conference. That one's coming up in the fall. That's COSIN, Ohio COSIN. And you just, as you go, you meet people and you have contacts. And we now have a new group, I want to say like a listserv almost, Groups.io that is through the state that people are joining, and we're growing that. And just the communication in just even the last 5 years has just gone through the roof. And I think that it's just a great, great thing because we all are there. We're all experiencing the same things. So why not put that power of working together, which is kind of back to what I said to you, I think even before we started recording. We do not teach kids in a classroom the way that we work in a work environment. That's something that, honest to Pete, if I could figure out the magic way to make that change, but at the K through 12 level and at the college level, they are not doing authentic work or the way that the work is happening the way we are doing in the workplace. I think that is the biggest problem that needs to change, because I'm telling you, if kids engage in real life work, you don't have to beg them to get work done or study for a test or whatever. That learning happens. And so that's, if I could like ride out through my retirement on making a small shift in that respect, that would be a dream come true, because I think that is a real big disconnect in the difference between how we teach and how we work. Maybe I should write a book. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Or record a podcast.
Yeah, or record a podcast. Yeah, absolutely.
But it does sound like you were doing that already somewhat when you were teaching with that business class, and the kids were making their own business. So as far as, my room. They would try to skip classes, like to stay in my room because they were running their business, like just be like, you got to go to class or you got to go home. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny how they will pick and choose where and who they want to be with. And it's funny. Kids are funny. Yeah. But so have you seen any of those? And I know it was a class, but have any of them actually continued going on past high school? That's awesome.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of them going to business, a lot of them who thought they wanted to do one thing in business, and then because they were involved in it, they were like, I don't know if I want to do this. Maybe I want to do marketing. So we had kids, kind of get better information about what they did want to do moving forward. But, some kids who thought, I don't think I want to do business, which is great too, because you save time and money with that as well. But we've had a lot of kids go on, to college. We've had some kids go on straight into the work world. It's been all over the board. But what has happened recently, since I have left the classroom, there's another teacher in there who is fantastic. He lets me come up every once in a while. I'm consultant Nidy now, so I get to come up and beat them up about their product ideas and be the bad guy that comes in and gives feedback that maybe they don't want to hear. But anyway, they compete now. So we had just started this when I left the classroom, but they compete locally and then they actually compete nationally. And I'm super proud to say our students at Hoover High School in little old North Canton, Ohio, have won first place in the national competition in DC 4 out of the last 5 years. It is magic up there. But these kids are incorporating their businesses now, and they are keeping selling their products. They have copyrightable the word just totally left my brain. They are
Patent.
patents. They are getting patents on their products, and they are incorporating with, kids that still want to be involved in it, and they are still running the businesses. So yes, I mean, but again, it's real. I mean, they create things out of nothing, and they have great success. I mean, some of these kids they're bringing in tens of thousands of dollars and they get to keep the money. They donate some, and then they get paychecks. So they get paychecks based on their position in the company, based on their sales, based on they have a bonus structure for their kind of participation. They have performance reviews. It is as close to real business as what you can make it be in a classroom. So they are engaged and learning and following through later. But we can do that in every classroom, I guess, is the important point. I was lucky because it was business, but honestly, you can do that kind of engaging work in any classroom. So, it's all about looking at what are your standards, and making sure you're teaching those, because clearly we have tests that we have to pass. But, there are ways that you can take those standards and make that work authentic and engaging. And then kids don't really have to memorize, because they live it and learn it and know it. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I wish I took a class like that in high school.
Me too. Yeah.
For going to school, that'd be great. Now since we're talking about technology and to a technology director and almost a business management class, or it is a business management class, do you see a lot of the products that the students are coming up with, are they more technology based, like online things or games, or technology based things? Or are they like, you can hold it in your hand, a product?
They are, you can hold it in your hand product, but what they're doing is using the technology around the product. So in other words, like we had a class, so they created a game. They created a financial literacy game, and they designed the board, and they had it produced, but they had to use technology. They had CorelDRAW in there, and they have the Adobe suite, but none of them walk in the door knowing how to use this software. You know what I mean? So they are teaching themselves how to use this in order to use it to create a product or to run the business. Some of them, we have an engraver in there, and they have to learn how to use the software to engrave, on something. And, so it may not be, because some of them don't know how to create an app. And actually, one of the games that was created, they were looking at trying to get an app created, but that's a little bit of a different level. We just didn't have that ability. But the interesting part, again, is think about how much technology is involved in business, generally speaking. Record keeping, using Excel for all of the accounting purposes. They have to create an annual report. So they have to learn how to use the software to make a visually appealing 12-page annual report. They have to create a commercial, so it's all the marketing, all the social media. I mean, they're using TikTok, they're using Instagram and Facebook for the old people. And but some of them have no idea how any of this works when they walk in the door. And that's this piece I'm saying. It's not like when I was in school where that information was in this little container and I have it and now I'm going to give it to you. Information is everywhere. It's accessible all the time in a gabillion different places. So that's a really valuable skill set that a lot of kids, need to learn or are learning, is how to access information on demand about how to do something or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I think that's how technology is fitting in that way as well.
Sure. And I think that's something where, I mean, that is real world experience, right? I mean, I came from a teaching background as well, and now I'm working for a technology company. I didn't have any business experience at all, but you have to learn how to learn things in order to continue on with a career or just life in general.
Yeah.
But what you mentioned about like learning how to use Adobe and the engraver and everything just reminded me of when I was teaching. I had a engineering teacher that would take those little tiny, I forgot what they're called, but they have them at every conference, those little baby robots that the kids have to put together. But he would open up all the boxes and remove a few of the parts, and the kids would have to learn how to use the 3D printer to engineer those parts to replace the ones he removed. And I thought that was one of the coolest ideas I've ever heard from a teacher.
Absolutely. Don't give them all the answers.
Right. Yeah. And it's hard too, because students will find 1,000 bits of information, except
Mhm.
for maybe like what they're supposed to actually be researching. So
Right.
when you have to physically or go online and find how to finish the task they've been given, I, honestly, I think it's probably more fun for the student too, because it's not just force feeding information down their throat and saying, hey, in a week you have a test, so hopefully you remember this.
Right. And then you'll forget it later. I
Yeah,
mean, we
exactly.
say we want lifelong learning. I mean, but lifelong learning is, I don't know how to do this. I left this place and now I'm at this place and I have to learn how to do this. So how do I do it? And I think, that's the fun part. I mean, and that's the hard part for teachers. Okay, so I'll come back around and put my teacher hat on. It is really hard to give up that kind of control in your classroom. I mean, it just is. We were programmed that, we are the person in front of the room, and it's really difficult to step back and let kids struggle, or let kids have discourse, and know how to weave through and manage that. It's much easier. And I don't want to say it like that because I don't want it to sound like teachers are looking for the easier way out. It just is. I mean, it's just factual that it's easier to hand out a piece of paper, the same piece of paper to all the students, and do the same work and grade the same work. It just is easier. But I think those teachers that kind of decide to step out and try, the new, like something new, a new way to work with their kids, that excitement kind of overruns, the desire for the comfort zone, right? So like when you see the spark of kids truly engaged in what they're doing, I mean, you can't do anything but get excited about that. So but it's hard because we're in these boxes, we're in these confines of these are the standards you have to teach and these are the tests the kids have to take. And, it's hard sometimes to break out of that. That's why I said the change in education needs to be from every level, because you can't, then kids go to college and they're back sitting in rows taking notes. So it has to be, it has to be everywhere, but learning really should be organic. We have a project years ago at the middle school when my kids came through, and I have all three of my kids are gifted and ADHD, which is, it's really fun in my house. Anyway, they are not the best kids to sit in a row, right, and do homework. And I mean, they're just not wired like that. So we had, they would go to DC and they would have to do a project. They would have to pick something like a monument or whatever to learn about that and then share with the rest. Totally makes total sense. Like, we're going to go to DC, so I'm going to talk about the Washington Monument. You're going to talk about the Lincoln Monument, and that's how we're going to learn about what we're going to see. So my son starts to engage in this, and he picks one thing. And then while he's researching, he sees something else, and he's like, ooh. And so he bopped over here, and then he went there. And I mean, the teacher ended up telling me, I think he ended up with a D because he never really got it done. But the teacher was like, he learned more than anyone I've ever known about Washington, D.C., because he just kept going and kept going and kept going. So, what do we want? I mean, do we want that passion for learning and growing and, or do we want, here's your project, here's your thing you have to complete? I don't know. I think we need to start having these conversations because, that's how, I mean, look at what the straight A grant. We knew nothing other than here's a grant, and they wanted to know what's something innovative you want to do, and we sat down around the table and it was like, what's something innovative we want to do? I mean, we had to work collaboratively and create something out of nothing. And that's the kind of thing that we should be encouraging in our classrooms, I think. That's what made us such a creative nation all along. Feel like we've kind of unfortunately turned, to go backwards rather than to keep moving forward. So I'll keep having these conversations with anyone that will listen, but.
So would you say that's maybe one of the bigger challenges in education today is getting away from that packaged information that the state says you have to know this or you can't graduate, so here's a book, or blending that with the, like your son, the person that just starts learning all of this information, and even though he maybe didn't do the project correctly, still learned more than every other student. I mean, how do you
put that into a grade?
Right.
I mean, right? Like that, I shouldn't say it because it's so controversial, but I think we should get rid of grades. I mean, I believe that you cannot define a student's ability or intelligence by a grade point average. And we lose so many kids along the way. And I had them in my class. I mean, when I was in school, I know who those kids are, and they went on to be super successful. They weren't necessarily a model student because they didn't, conform to how we typically teach in a classroom, but they were brilliant, and they went on to do great things. So I just feel very strongly that we have to find a better way of teaching, but teaching more about learning. And then just guiding kids through. I mean, are there things that they all need to know? Absolutely. So I'm not saying this should be a free for all, whatever, but we just need to really start thinking about because a lot of our kids that don't do well in school don't do well in school because of school, not because of them. They're bright, they're interested, and, they just don't conform to that traditional K-12 classroom. So, and I know that we have career tech classes in place and more hands-on opportunities. And I just think that, boy, we could be just doing so much more if we could break out of some of the confines. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I'm interested in keeping learning about it.
Well, and I feel like, unfortunately, that kind of also bleeds over into the work world, right? So if your boss asks you to complete a task by a certain time in a certain way, and you don't do it, then you're not really doing your job. But if you have the ability to maybe find another way to do that, whatever they're asking from you, then that's the side of, well, going down the rabbit hole in Washington, D.C. Like, that's where that innovation and exploration comes from. But ultimately, you still have to.
Absolutely. You have deliverables.
Right.
Right.
And I wish if I knew how to teach that, I 100% would. But it sounds like you have a pretty good idea of how to do it, and the passion behind it. So
yeah, I don't have all the answers. And I know that sometimes when I get going about what I do think, again, it can be controversial because, it goes against a lot of what we're wired to do in K-12 education. I just know I've seen a lot of kids come through my classes. I've seen my own kids struggle in their own ways. And there are just some things that I think if we would just not do it the way we've always done it, and have the conversations about what could we try, how could we maybe do it better, that, it might be worth it. And there's got to be some way. You're right. I mean, I can't say that you can't ever have a deadline or a way to review something that is made, but if you think about it, a lot of times we don't even make things on our own. I mean, think about how our software has changed, whether you're talking about Google or where you're Office 365, like we work collaboratively now to create deliverables. So, I mean, again, I just think there are things that we could be changing and tweaking to make learning more authentic. So that's my goal.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's ultimately the goal for probably every school. And that's why vocational schools and things like that, exist in the first place. And the technology is changing in those schools too. I mean, there's 14-year-olds learning CAD design. I mean,
right.
It's unreal. And it's only gonna go up from there. I know some schools are putting in like video game design classes, or maybe it's starting out as a club and will become a class at some point. So it is very cool. But unfortunately, still have to graduate with the grades that we have in place now. So
yeah.
Well,
but there's lots of different options. I mean, I had my daughter graduated and started college and was like, oof. And so she came to me and said, I think I want to be a cosmetologist. And I was like, I think you'd make a much better cosmetologist than an accountant, So she did. So she went and she got her license and she is loving life. And isn't that the goal? At the end of the day, it's about getting a career, or doing whatever it is. Might not be a career. You might be staying home with your kids, like whatever it is, does it bring you joy? Does it contribute to the community around you? And does it bring you joy? That's what I think. If we keep all that in mind as we bring kids through their education, I mean, that's the end goal, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. And I think, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, and I think it really does tie into that initial topic we discussed, which is just the innovative learning, and just how we can make, people enjoy life after school by giving them new ways to learn and turning them into lifelong learners.
Mhm.
Kind of to piggyback off that, like when I was in high school, I was in all advanced classes, dual credit through multiple colleges, and then I went to college for 1 year and dropped out, and it just wasn't for me.
Right.
And I felt bad at the time because again, I'd spent so many hours studying late at night for all my AP exams and things like that. And I mean, I love where I'm at now. I'm with a great company in K-12, and I'm just enjoying life and enjoying what I do. And I really think that does play a big part into the overarching goals.
It does. Well, and a lot of kids have a lot of stress as they're trying to go navigate through all those AP and dual credit and CCP. And I mean, there's so much more stress. I think about when I came through in the 80s. I mean, there just wasn't any of the stress that these kids have nowadays, which, is, we didn't even talk about mental health. That's a big part of this as well. So whether it's technology or the technology side of things or school or just anything, I mean, the kids have a lot more pressure these days than we ever did before. So, but again, joy, right? It's all about joy. So you're happy and so you're successful, right? I mean, and that's the message that I think we need to let these kids know. Your path might change, but as long as you, again, are success, you're successful if you are happy and you are contributing in a positive way. So
Yeah, and I think, obviously that's the goal. That's the American dream. That's what
Yep.
we're all here for. And it sounds like, you've definitely got a passion for helping students reach that goal. And it seems like you've probably feel like you're reaching that goal yourself by how you speak about all of this and the role you're in and what you can do to help those students get to that point as well. So I think that's awesome. We could probably talk for another few hours. But if there is a PSA you want to put out there for any students or teachers looking to do something new in their classroom, go ahead and put it out there.
okay, well, OBC, I mean, that's always a good one. If your district is not involved in Ohio Blended Collaborative, find out. I think our website is OHIOBC.com. I think, I can't remember. I should know that. I feel bad that I don't know that, but there's a lot of really great resources there. So, I think it's org. OHIOBC.org is a good place with a lot of resources. So, and just, what, it doesn't have to even be this, it could be anything. Just look for ways, to stretch yourself. Watch some videos. There's a lot of information out there online. Again, you get out what you put in. When I was a classroom teacher, I was stressed and trying to get everything done and raise kids and grade papers, but I did always put a little bit of time aside for myself to grow individually and to learn new things. And so I feel like if you do that, you will feel that benefit. But just look for ways to be more innovative. Think about how you could take a standard and, how would you want to engage with it? I mean, think about that. Like, do you want a worksheet or would you rather, find a different way to engage with that content? So your kids want that too. It doesn't have to be this big giant endeavor. It could be little teeny tiny things along the way. As long as you're moving forward, that's all you need. So I guess that would be my announcement.
Kim, I think we got to get you as a keynote speaker at one of these conferences at some point.
Yeah, but I'm ADHD and I could never memorize a speech. So
no, that's okay. All you need to do is just have the same conversation with a group of people and you'll be fine.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys. The other side of my job is managing all of these Chromebooks and everything. And I will say we do really appreciate the relationship we have with K-12 Tech. So I was a little stressed out about, how we were going to transition, and it's been great. So it makes me able to do other things in my job when I'm not worried about the logistics of Chromebooks. So I'll just say thank you for that.
Absolutely. And we're here to help with whatever you guys need. But again, I thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today. I know it's busy. I know it's the beginning of the year coming up. So really do appreciate you coming on. and I hope we can get you on again.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks for joining us.